Good morning from Bath and welcome to another video. And today we're going to be taking a short walk through Bath, but it's a walk with a difference because it's going to be a rock and roll walk. So along the way we're going to be stopping at some places which are associated with the music scene here in Bath, and also talking about some of the famous and not so famous bands who've played here. And we're starting at the Royal Crescent. What comes to mind when you think about the Royal Crescent? Well, you might think about Jane Austen. She of course used it as a location in Northanger Abbey and Persuasion. You might think about Charles Dickens. He used it as a setting in the Pickwick Papers. And you'll probably think about the TV series Bridgerton, but you probably wouldn't think about the Dave Clark 5. So the Dave Clark 5 are a very successful British group from the 1960s, and they had a string of hits between 1963 and 1967. And like a lot of the top groups at that time, they starred in their own feature film. And the film was called Catch Us If You Can, and quite a bit of it was filmed right here in Bath. So the action starts in London, but it shifts here to Bath when Dave Clark and leading lady Barbara Ferris are given a lift by a middle-aged couple who invite them to stay with them in their home here on the Royal Crescent. Then later they're joined by the rest of the group who arrive here from London in that archetypal British 1960s vehicle, the Mini Moke. This is George Street, and this was the entrance to Mole's, which for over 30 years was the heart of Bath's alternative music scene. So quite a few bands played here before they got really big. You had the Smiths, the Cure, the Eurythmics in the early 80s, and in the 1990s Radiohead. Also some great but not so famous bands like Stump, who I saw playing here in the late 1980s. Anyone else remember Stump? They were great. So across the road is the Bath Cider House. But back in the 1980s, it was a nightclub called Acacia Avenue. But sometime in the early 90s, it became a venue called The Hub. And they had a few gigs there. And I remember going there to see The Fall and also Lush. This is Queen Square, and this is the Francis Hotel, where in June of 1963 the Beatles stayed when they played here in Bath. But more about the Beatles later. So back in the 1980s, this was the home of Crescent Studios, and Tears for Fears recorded their first single here, Stuff for the Children, and XTC recorded their album The Big Express here. Here we are at the Roman Baths, and we're back with the Dave Clark 5 and Catch Us If You Can. So after the scene shot at the house in the Royal Crescent, the action moves here, where the group join their host at a fancy dress ball. And this is where the group's time in Bath comes to an end, as the ball descends into chaos and lots of people leap fully clothed into the Great Bath. And I don't think they'd be allowed to do that now. So this is Bog Island, and we can't pass this place without paying our respects to another one of Bath's long lost nightclubs, the Island Club. This is the Pavilion, and in the 1960s this was where all the top bands came to play when they visited Bath, and it was here on June the 10th, 1963 that the Beatles played. Some of the other bands who played here at that time were the Rolling Stones, the Who, the Kinks, the Move, the Small Faces, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, it was a great time for music, and they all played here. So here we are back at the Royal Crescent, and I hope you've enjoyed today's video and our short walk through some of Bath's rock and roll history. And well, maybe next time you think about the Royal Crescent, you won't think about some horse and carriage rattling over the cobblestones in a period drama. Instead, you'll think about the Dave Clark 5 in a mini moke. See you next time.